if you're married and you're having sex, you should be having children.
Well, that is a very fine opinion you've got there, Mr. Pastor Sir, whose name I don't know, couldn't find, and is otherwise irrelevant. I am kind of curious, though, what makes you think you're the authority on the whens and whys of sex and childbearing?
And if you don't like that, take it up with Jesus.
Ah, I see. You think Jesus, the fictional character that you claim is the savior of all mankind, is the authority on the whens and whys of sex and childbearing. Well, that's fantastic. Now all you have to do is demonstrate that this entity is actually something that is real. That way we'll know you're predicating your entire opinion on something that exists other than just your biblically inspired desire to exert authoritarian control over women.
Because the primary purpose for the sexual function is the generation of new life.
Well, we can certainly see that the toupee here isn't quite up on his biology courses. Sex in and of itself serves many functions, of which childbearing is only one. People have sex for intimacy, pleasure, pain reduction, exercise, medical necessity, stress relief, and sometimes even to induce labor. So scientifically or biologically, there is no primary function of sex. And if anything was to be considered primary, it would probably be the goal or goals of the people that are having the sex.
Children are not expensive.
Anyone who thinks this has never had kids or they have access to wealth beyond the national average. As of 2022, the USDA estimates that the average cost of raising a child is around $16,400 a year. For 18 years, that amounts to an average of $295,200. All of those figures are wildly affected by a number of factors, including property taxes, rises and dips in the economy, resource availability, inflation, and familial support systems, and they don't include any prenatal medical costs or college expenses where things can get really astronomical. Having children is wildly expensive, but that just happens to be the society that we live in. Maybe one day it will change, but that sure as hell ain't today.
Parents are expensive.
Well, adults are as expensive as they want to be. They can be frugal or generous or extravagant. It's really their choice what they do with the money that they earn.
Children don't ask to eat out all the time.
Yeah, he's never had kids.
Parents are the ones that want to go on fancy vacations.
Well, yeah, parents may want to go on family vacations, but they likely can't afford it because every dime they make is going to covering the costs of having children. Adults with no children also like to go on vacations because they've worked hard for it and they want to reward themselves.
You're the one that's expensive in the relationship. Marriage is a war on selfishness.
Now, personally speaking, I've been with my wife for nearly 20 years, and I have never once thought of my marriage in these combative terms. In fact, the primary reasons that we got married were because we understood our equality from the jump, our life goals were aligned, and we were extremely sexually compatible. I would recommend that if such combative terminology comes to your mind concerning the person you've chosen to spend your life with, you may want to reevaluate things for your mental health and for theirs.
Marriage works when a man and a woman say, I'm going to lay my life down for you. She sacrifices her selfishness and he sacrifices his selfishness.
So this is just weird to me. The idea of sacrificing just seems so extreme when it comes to evaluating things like relationships and marriage. In a healthy relationship where communication is paramount, compromise comes easy, and it's never a sacrifice, it's a reprioritization. Using hard-edged, emotionally charged terms like sacrifice, terms that imply distinctive loss and finality, only serve to disbalance the power dynamics in the relationship long term. I don't think anyone should be listening to someone like this pastor, someone who knows so very little about basic human relationships, especially when it comes to childbearing.
And when they don't do that, all that happens is marriage just exposes how selfish they really are.
Yeah, that would be an unhealthy relationship, and they usually end in divorce. So what?
What happens is they'll get past the initial stage of individual selfishness, and then they'll get into what I call collective selfishness.
I also think it's exceptionally weird to frame a couple in a relationship who want to spend time with each other, enjoy their relationship, build their lives together, and have fun in their youth as selfish. From my perspective, that is an incredibly cynical and, frankly, envious assessment of how other people conduct their relationships, which are also, of course, no business of this douche canoe.
And they'll look at each other and say, hey, isn't life amazing right now? We're in Italy. Can you believe it? For 3 months. We can't have kids and do this, so let's not have kids.
Sure, and it's a perfectly valid position to take. And for them to be considered selfish, it would imply that they are depriving another person of something. If that couple already had kids and decided to bon voyage without a care about the kids themselves, then that certainly would be selfish. But if the kids don't exist in the first place, then it's not selfish because no one is being deprived of anything. And this, of course, goes both ways. If the couple wants kids but have determined that they are not psychologically or emotionally prepared for children, or they want to ensure that they can afford to give a child the life they deserve, would that also be selfish? So no, a loving couple deciding to put their needs or even their desires first before bringing another life into the world is hardly selfish. Sometimes it's even prudent.
You see, children are a blessing from the Lord, much like marriage is.
And he's couching all of this in his God belief. Unfortunately, there's a few problems here. Seeing as how the concept of marriage dates back to about 2350 BCE in the Far East, centuries before human beings ever thought up the Christian God concept, and seeing as how pregnancies are often rife with complications, permanently alter the woman in ways that she can't possibly anticipate, and fail about 40% of the time for completely natural reasons simply due to our biology, and children can be born with horrific illnesses, genetic defects, abnormalities, and even cancer, and this occurs all the time. No, marriage is not something that is given by the Christian God. Pregnancies are absolutely terrifying, and children are unfortunately not always a blessing.
But children require sacrifice. And there's a collective sacrifice that a couple is called to instead of a collective selfishness.
Yeah, we call it being good parents, but you're flip-flopping between couples who have sex with no intention of having kids and couples who have kids and have difficulty being good parents. The two are not the same.
When a mother and a father say, we are going to lay ourselves down together for the benefit of our children.
If they decide to have them, of course, which they may not, which is also perfectly valid.
That's what makes a family work.
Families work for all kinds of reasons. Sacrifice and children are not prerequisites for a functional family.
That will give you the love that you need to have children.
So people who don't have kids, for whatever reason they decide, don't possess the love to have children? How does that even follow? Some people like myself and my wife simply don't want kids. That's it. This is the kind of screwed up thinking that this level of indoctrination results in regarding relationships, marriage, sex, and childbearing. The primary reason individuals like this frame these things in this fashion is because the church's survival is dependent upon the money, power, and control that each successive generation joining the congregation affords it. If fewer children are born, that means fewer children being indoctrinated in Sunday school, which means fewer asses in the pews, which means less money in the collection plate, less people manipulated by false guilt and fear-mongering to vote the way the church wants them to vote. People recognizing today that having children is a monumental responsibility, that they have a choice in whether or not to do so, that it's not selfish to not have children, and sometimes selfish to have children, and that having children is not the benchmark of a couple's success is a good thing. It means fewer children are being born into unsustainable situations, fewer are becoming broken products of the system, and more are becoming productive and positive members of society. But for all of you religious leaders out there trying to guilt couples into having kids they either don't want or can't afford, maybe it wasn't them, maybe it was you who were just too selfish all along. Be safe, be excellent to each other. I'll see you next time.